I'm Anouk van Westrene. I'm a 29-year-old PhD student and I work here at SEIN. SEIN is an epilepsy care facility, and we have one location here in Heemstede and one in Zwolle. And we have in as well as outpatient clinics, and this means that patient can come here and visit a neurologist and they can come for diagnosis or treatment of epilepsy. And we also have facilities, we call that residential care facilities, and those are for people with severe epilepsy and mental disabilities who can't live at home, so they will live here and be taken care of. So now I will explain what epilepsy is, because not all of you might know what that is. Epilepsy is a disease of the brain, and actually it's a disease that causes seizures, and seizures are events of overexcitation of brain cells, and its presentation depends a lot on the location of this overexcitation in the brain, and it can be very diverse. For example, when it's located in a very small area in the brain, for example the area that controls movement of your right hand, you can have small seizures that are just jerks or like clonus of the hand, and you can be fully aware of what's happening around you, but you can't control it. It's you're overwhelmed by it. Some seizures can get larger, they can spread through the brain, and when both sides of the brain are involved, then someone will lose consciousness. We often see that people will bite their tongue, and they can also become incontinent, so they lose their urine. And you can have convulsions or shaking of the whole body. And these seizures often are very unpredictable, so people can experience them anywhere, during the day or during the night, and sometimes they can be dangerous. Most of the seizures will just stop spontaneously, so that won't cause any harm, but some seizures will need medication to stop them. Others, when they just continue, they can cause a lot of harm to the people. Also, when a seizure occurs when someone is, for example, riding a bike through busy traffic, this can be really dangerous, you can imagine. And although it's rare, what can happen is that some people die of epilepsy. We call this SUDEP. That stands for sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. It's actually a situation where people die after a seizure, but we don't know the exact cause. So it can be very serious. It's really important because seizures are really unpredictable to monitor people with epilepsy, because some seizures will need medication to stop them, and sometimes people can hurt themselves by bumping into something or falling out of bed, so they will need some help. One way to monitor these people is to use seizure detection devices, and these are devices that can help to set up an alarm for parents or caregivers who can come and help the patient or the people with epilepsy. There are different ways to monitor people with epilepsy. In our residential care facilities, we use a lot of different monitoring devices. We have, for example, in almost every room we have auditory systems, so microphones to listen to the people, and we can pick up different sounds and also sounds related to epilepsy, so the nurses or caregivers can come to help. And in some rooms, in addition to these microphones, we also have video cameras, so we can actually really monitor the people. But still, unfortunately, a lot of seizures still are missed despite of these monitoring devices. So we also have some specific devices. For example, we have some sensors. You can put them in the bed, like a bed mattress, and they will pick up movement. When someone's having a seizure and is starting shaking, they can pick up these movements. And we also have different kinds of bracelets you can put around the wrist or the arm, and they can pick up movements as well as heart rate, which usually goes up when a seizure appears. So these devices can alarm the caregivers or nurses when a seizure happens. For parents or caregivers at home, there are also different things or monitoring devices that can be used. Most of the parents will have made some sort of an own device, so they put on like security cameras in the room of their child, or some microphones, or baby phones are also used often. For them it's also possible to buy a seizure detection device, but unfortunately a lot of them are not yet reimbursed by healthcare insurance, so they can be really expensive. On the other hand, not all parents or caregivers can really trust a seizure detection device. In some cases, parents will even sleep in the same bed as their child, so they will notice everything that is happening during the night. And other parents will find a solution by keeping the bedroom door opened at all times, so they can hear their child when having a seizure. But you can imagine what the impact of this can be on the privacy of the people. There are a lot of different seizure detection devices available nowadays, but not all of them have a great performance. The best device would be that it will set off an alarm every time a seizure happens and never set off an alarm when there's no seizure. Well, unfortunately such a device doesn't exist. So a lot of devices are really sensitive, so they can set off an alarm when a seizure happens, but the counterpart is that they also will set off an alarm when there's no seizure. We call this false alarms. So you have this trade-off you're always struggling with. You want to have a really sensitive device, but you don't want to have a lot of false alarms. So we're still finding the right way, the right device to have a good performance, but it's really hard. So there are different seizure detection devices, and some devices are better for some type of epilepsy, while others are better for other types. For example, when people experience almost only large seizures with a lot of shaking of the body, you can have a device that measures movement or the movement of the arms and legs, and those are really suited for these people. Then they are really sensitive for these type of seizures, but they can miss other types of seizures. And from a doctor's perspective, I think we want especially the large and potentially dangerous seizures to be alarmed by a device. But when you look from a parent's or caregiver's perspective, this can be really different, because some parents don't want to be only alerted for large seizures, they just want to know everything that's happening to their child, also the minor or small seizures. The reason for this is that you don't want to only be there when a large seizure happens. Small seizures can also be really scary for children, and they might need comfort, and you might just want to be there for them. On the other hand, also small seizures can be like a pattern, and sometimes when a lot of small seizures has happened, afterwards a large seizure starts. So for parents it's really good to know when these small seizures happen, so they can sort of predict when other things will gonna happen. And also all seizures can have impact on daily life of the children, also the small ones. Sometimes you see that they will change in behavior. They can be a bit annoying or frustrated after a couple of small seizures, and it's good for parents to know this so they can anticipate. So what people are involved when a child is having epilepsy? I think this depends a lot on where the child is living. For example, when the child lives in one of our facilities, like the residential care facilities, most of the time they will just live here and their parents will stay at home. So in this facility there are nurses and also doctors available to help the child. During the night there are a few nurses who watch different rooms at the same time, and when a seizure appears and they get alarmed or see it happening on video or hear some sounds through the microphone, one of the nurses will go there and see if they can help. Most of the times, as I told you before, seizures will stop spontaneously, but sometimes the children will need medication. And when a seizure doesn't stop even after medication, then usually they need more care. So there's always a neurologist or a doctor available. They can call for help, and sometimes they even need to call an ambulance, and the child will need to go to the hospital. So when a child is living at home, this is a whole different environment than at the residential care facility. You have the whole family that gets involved when a child is having epilepsy. When there are brothers and sisters, they can also be really worried that a seizure might happen. And of course the parents are really involved. And during the night, most of the times the monitoring devices are used by the parents, so the other brothers and sisters won't be alerted by that. On the other hand, seizures can cause a lot of movement, sounds. Sometimes people scream when they have a seizure, so the other brothers and sisters can be alerted, and that can scare them or worry them a lot.